The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth. Until this ancient artifact was picked up by the most unlikely creature imaginable, the president of MMORPGs. For the time now comes when this man will shape the fortunes of an 18-year-old video game.
Have you ever fallen in love with a fantasy world, either a book or a movie or a TV series, and you just thought, man, I wish I could live in that world? Can I help you? Me neither. But apparently that's how a lot of people felt about a little-known trilogy of books released in the 1950s, The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and The Silmarillion and the movie trilogies are some of the most popular works of fantasy fiction ever created. So it only made sense that in the early 2000s, when a new genre of game called MMORPGs that revolved around massive worlds that were populated with other real people, that there would be a MMORPG set in Middle-earth. And after a few more years of the rights to Lord of the Rings being bought and sold between a few different publishers, in 2007, Turbine was able to release The Lord of the Rings Online: The Shadows of Angmar. The reviews for the game were great, and it sold a few 100,000 copies, but it never really managed to become one of the top MMOs on the market. Regardless though, it's managed to do something that very few MMORPGs have ever managed to do: keep existing. And there's still an admittedly small but active player base. And whether I like it or not, for the next 100 hours, I am going to be one of them.
Let's get one thing out of the way first. Why 100 hours? Isn't that a bit much? Yeah, it is. But if there's one thing us YouTubers know how to do, it's steal each other's ideas. But honestly, there is a good reason for it. MMORPGs, more than any other game genre, are deep and complex and require sometimes dozens of hours of investment just to get a good understanding of what the game is like. Now, I know some people would call this a design flaw. This journey starts, like so many others do, with a character creator. We all know Middle-earth is chock full of diversity, like white male men, white male elves, white male hobbits, white male Dunedain, and Lord of the Rings Online is no different. There are 8 total races to choose from, all your standard token fantasy races we know and love, and also the Bjorning, which is a race that is also a class that shapeshifts into a bear. You know, the Bjorning from the movies. Each race comes with a few unique traits, which surprisingly are split down the middle of being beneficial and harmful. Elves, for example, have reduced morale, this game's term for health, and reduced morale generation because they're just really empathetic and kinda sad all the time, I guess. But elves also get increased agility because Legolas. Each race also gets their own tutorial sections. The Elf tutorial takes place at the Battle of the Alliance of Men and Elves against Sauron many years before the events of Lord of the Rings. The Human tutorial has you escaping prison. The Bjorning tutorial is set in Mead Hollow, where you just kind of walk around as a bear for a while. I actually didn't finish this one, I can't tell you what this is. All of these minor differences from race to race might seem kind of inconsequential, and to be honest, yeah, the race traits are somewhat forgettable beyond the very early levels, and the tutorial sections are just that, tutorial sections. But if there's one thing I love about MMORPGs, It's when they remember to be RPGs, even in these minor ways. I want my race selection to mean something tangibly and mechanically so that my human champion isn't exactly the same as someone's hobbit champion, because we all know the hobbit champion is objectively inferior. These traits help accomplish that, and are a part of immersing the player in the game. It's a part of MMOs that we've lost over the years in pursuit of perfect balance. Sure, you can claim the imbalance restricting choice is a drawback, but to that I say, grow up. So I guess what I'm saying is these traits are pretty cool, and really helped immerse me in fantasy role-playing. I mean, how else was I supposed to envision myself as a human? Once you pick your race, you can pick your class. The classes cover all the basic archetypes you see in other RPGs. The burglar and the hunter are your fast-paced, agility-based fighters. Champions and guardians are your warriors. Runekeepers are a play on wizards. The list of classes, though, is really extensive and includes some unique playstyles that you don't see in many other MMOs. You have the Mariner, the Minstrel, the Lore Master, things that really beg you to get out of your comfort zone and try something new you haven't played 1,000 times over in whatever MMORPG you grew up with. So anyways, I chose to be a human champion. The rest of character creation lets you steer into the role-playing aspect even harder, giving you a pretty huge amount of cosmetic customization and the ability to pick the region your character is from. The game will even give you some guidelines on what your username should look like based on the region you picked. For example, I chose to originate from Gondor. The men of Gondor often have names that end in Rod, so I just added that to the end of my favorite noun to come up with my username. So everyone, meet Sloprod, man champion. Before he can save the world, he's gotta learn how to play the game. At the start of the human tutorial, you're introduced to a character named Strider. Here's a fun fact you probably didn't know. This is actually Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings movies. And you know what? Here's another fun fact for you. In this scene, the actor playing Aragorn actually broke his foot when he kicked this helmet. Wow. Subscribe for more top 10 fun fact videos. I was pretty surprised though to find out that this game takes place right alongside the story of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I expected this to be some sort of prequel like Star Wars The Old Republic is, but no, this game throws you right into the action alongside all of the iconic characters of the franchise. Specifically, you start off in the Shadows of Angmar campaign that takes place just after Frodo leaves the Shire with the ring. This campaign is the base version of The Lord of the Rings Online, releasing in 2007 with a level cap of 50. Since then, there have been 11 expansions, each increasing the level cap bit by bit, all the way to where it is today. 150! These expansions also added new areas from Tolkien's story to the map, which has led to the map today looking like this. Oh, wait, sorry, no. It actually looks like this. Whoop, still wrong. It actually looks like this. This whole thing, this is massive. This game, like the world it takes place in, is unbelievably huge, which I guess isn't a surprise when the source material is so vast that there are people out there whose actual title is Tolkien Scholar. Each of these regions is full of dozens of towns and landmarks, each of which comes with hundreds of quests. Spoiler alert, I don't ever make it past Eriador, where the Shadows of Angmar campaign takes place. This is not a quick game to get through, but more on that later. For now, let's just get past the tutorial. The tutorial teaches you the basics of movement, combat, and quests, all of which are pretty standard MMORPG systems. If you've played World of Warcraft or any of its clones, you'll understand how to get around in this game. It's just like those with a little more jank. Like I said before, this game came out in 2007, and over that time, it's received a lot of updates, but surprisingly few updates in that time have been retroactive. The graphics, for example, are largely the same as they were in 2007. That's why this game looks a lot closer to Knights of the Old Republic 2 than it does to games that are just a few years younger than it, like Skyrim or Final Fantasy XIV. The basic character controls like walking and jumping feel floaty and somewhat disconnected from your actual input. It's not like latency, it's just like why does my character have a 6-foot vertical? And then there's the user interface, which is both hard to look at and hard to use. On one hand, this is actually awesome. I love that the game has been able to march forward while leaving its origin intact. It avoids ruining the magic like so many other MMORPGs do when they feel the need to go back and revamp or remove old content for the sake of consistency. On the other hand, the average monitor in 2007 was a bulky 4.3 CRT running at best 1024 by 728 resolution, unless you were one of those rich kids who already had a widescreen monitor. So Lord of the Rings Online was designed with that resolution in mind. That means the user interface on my 1440p widescreen monitor is really tiny. I mean, like, so tiny that I can't really read the tooltips on my abilities to learn what they do. Is this just me being old? Maybe, but either way, I had to dive into the options to scale this bad boy up. And let me tell you, this user interface was not designed to be scaled up. Increasing the scale by 50% made all the icons blurry, including the text, which shouldn't that just be font size? Why is the text blurry? This resulted in it being almost more unreadable than it was when it was tiny, but I guess I still preferred it over the really small icons. And then there was the fact that UI elements started overlapping each other extremely aggressively, and I could not figure out for the life of me how to move these things around. Despite digging through the extensive user interface settings menu, I just couldn't find anything. It wasn't until I looked on Reddit to find out that you had to press Control and backslash to enter the UI's edit mode, which, you know, obviously, how did I not just figure that out? Once I was able to move things around, the UI became passable. But man, it was still not the most comfortable thing to get used to. Like I said, the problems with the UI are just a symptom of the larger problem with the game. It's largely the same game it was in 2007, for better and for worse. That age will show itself a lot in these 100 hours, and it's not always very charming. But I just hit level 2, which means I can start working my way through my class's trait tree. Your class traits are the main class progression system in Lord of the Rings Online. Most classes have 3 specializations to choose from, which are commonly referred to as blue, red, and yellow. You might not realize this at first, but they're called that because the colors for each specialization are blue, red, and yellow. You also might not have realized that in this scene, the actor who plays Aragorn actually broke his foot when he kicked that helmet. Each specialization defines what your character does and how they do it. For champions, the blue specialization is the tank, the red champion deals high single target DPS, and the yellow champion deals AoE damage. At first, you're locked into one specialization until you fully progress through its tree, at which point you can then move into a second specialization. If you've ever played World of Warcraft's Cataclysm expansion, it's almost that exact system, which isn't surprising because this class trait system was designed at the same time Cataclysm was ongoing. That was 15 years ago, by the way. We're rushing towards death at a rapid pace. You might be thinking, wow, if the max level is 150, you must get 150-ish points to spend on your talent tree, since you get a point every level, right? And to that I say, no, you idiot. At first you do get a talent point to spend every level up, but that stops at level 21, where you don't get your next until level 23. Then you continue getting a trait point every 2 levels until level 49, when you then start getting a trait point every level for 49, 50, and 51. Then it goes back to every 2 levels until 57, where you get a point every level again until level 66. Basically, it's completely random, and you get a point when you do, and you don't get to choose, and that's fine. Get over it. The maximum trait points you'll get is 98, which you unlock at level 140. It just makes sense, guys. But wait, there's more! The second major character progression system is virtue traits. There are 21 virtues, each with their own stat-boosting effects. Determination, for example, boosts your agility, physical mastery, and critical rating. What do all those stats do? I don't know. Stop asking so many questions. You can equip up to 5 virtues at a time to benefit from their stat boosts, but to really get the most out of them, you're gonna want to level them up. To level up a virtue, first you have to left click on that virtue to mark it as earning. Now whenever you get virtue experience, you'll gain XP into that virtue. But how do you get virtue experience? Well, for that you have to complete deeds. Deeds are another progression system that rewards you with virtue experience. Sometimes. Sometimes they don't.
Okay, stop. Maybe this is all just way too complex. I mean, all these systems and mechanics to learn, and I'm not even really enjoying myself. But what if I just quit? No. I have to keep going. Well, I guess it's pretty obvious the story doesn't end there. Far from it.
I continued progressing through the starting area of Farthest, completing every single quest that came my way. You might notice that there are little ring icons over NPCs' heads, and those, obviously, are quest indicators. Like the standard exclamation point you see in other MMOs, a ring icon means there's an available quest, and a slightly darker ring icon, and I do mean slightly, means you can turn in a quest. This is just another part of this game's UI being completely unreadable. The vast majority of quests are your standard MMO affair, things like killing 4 brigands to thin out the rank of bandits, or gathering herbs to try and cure an NPC's disease, and killing boars for their meat. But there's also a second type of quest, represented by a different icon, a burning ring. These are main storyline quests, or book quests. If you're familiar with Final Fantasy XIV's main scenario quest, or the MSQ as it's often called, this is the same thing. Each expansion comes with its own main storyline to complete that will take you from zone to zone, telling, as you probably guessed, the story of the expansion. The first quest to give the exposition of this expansion, if you can call it that, comes early in the game when Galadriel visits you in a dream to show you who the main antagonist of Shadows of Angmar is. Door. Like Mordor! Wait, nope, that's actually just a door. That is, the bad guy's actually this guy. His name's Mordor, we find that out later. Galadriel tells us that it falls on us to deal with the threat in Angmar, and that the fate of Middle-earth is tied to none other than Sloprod. Man champion. So how will Sloprod save Middle-earth? By cowering in fear. Like, a lot. This is one of my least favorite things that video games, especially MMORPGs, love to do. If an enemy is giving a speech, or running away, or just like standing there menacingly, the devs want to give a reason you can't interfere in that moment. And since Lord of the Rings Online has a lot of story moments, you'll find yourself losing control of your character so that terrible things can happen right before your eyes. A lot. It's both frustrating and dumb. I mean, if I'm strong enough to kill this guy in a boss fight, why am I so scared of him? It's also a nitpick, but if a nitpick happens 1,000 times, it feels pretty significant. These moments usually come right before a boss fight, and right now, Sloprod, man champion, has to take out Calder Cobb, man traitor. So let's talk about combat. Combat in Lord of the Rings Online is really, really simple. You have abilities on your hotbar, you press them, your character does the ability, and a few seconds later, you probably won. But the combat isn't exactly snappy and responsive like you might see in modern games that use a similar system. It is really slow-paced. When you press an ability on your hotbar, it'll get a yellow outline indicating that it's been queued and next up to be executed. A green outline means the ability is currently being executed, and if you hit the same ability twice, you remove it from the queue. The intention by the designers seems to be specifically to avoid the button mashing combat that hotbar systems usually lead to. This means you'll frequently have combats where you're hitting just a few buttons before it's over, and that, as a whole, combat is much more laid back. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. For example, I really like that if I queue an ability and I don't have the fervor, a champion's resource they build up in battle, to use it yet, it'll wait until I do instead of canceling that action instantly. The drawback, though, is that I feel a total disconnect between me and my character. Instead of feeling like I'm totally in control of my character like you typically want from an RPG, it can sometimes feel like you're giving commands to units in a strategy game. But in defense of Lord of the Rings Online, the slow pace of combat might not be entirely a design choice and might actually be a design restriction because of a dark secret lying within the game's code. Ominous music. Wait, but more on that later. Did you know that this game has horses? I can't wait to get one. And look, this quest is going to teach me how to ride a mount. You just have to buy this quest first. Cool. That's right. In Lord of the Rings Online, there are occasionally quests that you have to purchase. That might sound ridiculous, and that's because it is. But what's more ridiculous is that when I tried to unlock this quest using the in-game currency it gave me, Lord of the Rings Online crashed. Seriously, in a quest designed to teach me how to pay for things, the game crashes. This is still like an hour into my playtime, and if the UI wasn't going to make me quit, this was really testing my patience. Like, what do you mean? This is supposed to be a tutorial for how to use the in-game store, and it led to my entire game crashing. It's not like I wanted to open the store, you made me do that! But microtransactions are a part of this game, and whether I want to or not, I have to talk about it.
Lord of the Rings Online has been a free-to-play game since 2010, and to its credit, you can get through an incredible amount of content without paying a single penny to Standing Stone Games. That includes playing through every expansion through the Helm's Deep expansion, and even things that are locked behind microtransactions can be earned entirely through gameplay. Lot Row points are the currency used by Lord of the Rings Online to do just about everything when it comes to microtransactions. You can use them to buy cosmetics, you can use them to buy bonus XP, you can even use them to buy entire expansions. And quests like the mountain quest I mentioned earlier can be unlocked via Lot Row points as well. You can either buy Lot Row points through the store with real life money, or if you'd prefer, you can earn them in-game by doing something called deeds. Deeds, if you recall me briefly mentioning earlier, are bad. I really don't like them, and I wish I didn't have to do them, but if you don't want to spend money on this game, you're gonna have to grind a lot of deeds.
Deeds are a progression system that are tied to regions, your race, and your class. Each deed requires you to do something based on the type of deed it is. Slayer deeds require you to kill a certain amount of a monster, Explorer deeds require you to discover a certain amount of landmarks in an area, Quest deeds require you to complete a certain amount of quests, and so on. Some deeds reward you with Virtue XP, which I mentioned earlier, and as far as I know, they're the only way to gain Virtue XP. But they also give you Lot Row points, ranging from 5 to 10 and rarely even 15. This is the only way to get Lot Row points as a free player. These combined rewards make deeds really, really important, but that doesn't change the fact that deeds are straight up stinky. The vast majority of deeds in the game are Slayer deeds. The Slayer deed will tell you to kill something like 30 to 50 of a certain monster, and that can take a while since combat, like I said, is pretty slow. Completing this deed will give you 5 Lot Row points, or 6.6 cents based on the Lot Row store's value of Lot Row points to USD. The real catch is that you don't get any Virtue XP from completing this deed. Instead, you're awarded a new deed, the Advanced Slayer deed. The Advanced Slayer deed basically says, hey, good job killing all those monsters. You want some Virtue XP, little guy? Do it again then. So now you have to complete this deed, which asks you to kill twice as many monsters as the base Slayer deed did. This system has you killing hundreds of monsters repeatedly for the most pitiful rewards, but every character at some point will have to grind deeds, and it does not feel good. But hey, if you want to speed up earning those Lot Row points, you can always just spend Lot Row points to make deeds go by faster. What a fun gameplay loop.
Listen, I know all MMOs are treadmills, constantly moving the finish line, so you feel like you've never actually beat the game, but this is just a little too on the nose, isn't it? If it has any redeeming qualities at all, it's that a lot of these Slayer deeds you will make decent progress on just over the course of the quests in an area, but it's rare that you'll ever finish like an entire deed through questing, considering you have to kill like 300 monsters. I mean, of course you could avoid so much of this by just becoming a VIP. You get 500 free Lot Row points a month and so many other benefits. I mean, it's actually kind of crazy. After all, aren't I a VIP? Maybe I'll just sign up for 1 month. No, I can't.
Riding my brand new horse into Bree, I was finally able to get into the meat and potatoes of what Lord of the Rings Online is. The gameplay loop of Lord of the Rings Online is a lot like any other MMORPG from the last 20 years. You accept a bunch of quests in town, go out to complete them, return to town to turn them in, and repeat. It's not a bad loop by any means, but it's the kind of thing that feels like if you've played it once, you've played it 1,000 times. Either way, I was able to turn my brain off, do some questing, and turn on my favorite movie while doing these super easy quests. Well, they were easy, until I noticed this guy. He's got a quest icon over his head, but what he has for you isn't a quest at all. It's a difficulty system. A difficulty system in an MMORPG? That's pretty rare, but to be honest, it's an idea I can get behind. Modern MMORPGs have a habit of being way too easy until you get to the absolute late game, which means you're never actually forced to learn how to use your abilities properly, since you can just brute force your way through everything. Back in my day, if you pulled more than 1 or 2 mobs, or even just tried to fight something a few levels higher than you, you'd have to pull out all the stops just to stay alive. This forced you to learn your full toolkit in a way that felt really satisfying when you finally mastered it. But I get that isn't the experience everyone is looking for, especially in a game that's so story-driven like Lord of the Rings Online is. For me though, I like to have that extra challenge, to use that extra bit of brain power on my mob pool, so I was happy to see a way to customize that experience. The difficulty system is pretty straightforward. The higher the difficulty, the more health enemies have and the less damage you deal. There are also special effects called enrage effects that start at difficulty 3, but the game doesn't explain that to you. So neither will I. In exchange for the higher difficulty, you get 20% increased experience for monster kills and 5% increased virtue XP, but I still think it'd be more efficient to just keep normal difficulty on to get kills significantly faster, and I'm not even in it for the increased XP anyway, but it's still a nice little bonus. I decided to go with difficulty 3 to get a good balance of harder fights without feeling like I'm in hell the entire time. I mean, at the highest difficulty, you literally deal 14% of your usual damage and take 6 times more damage. It's a little ridiculous, but hey, it's there for you if that's what you want, and I think that's pretty cool. Immediately upon changing the game difficulty, I felt the need to manage my pulls and queue my skills more efficiently. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, it just made me think, I guess I died to the very first monster I fought, so maybe I should be thinking harder. No, but seriously, that was me just messing around. All this higher difficulty really means is you should be careful pulling, say, I don't know, a mob with a spooky red frame and another level 7 mob at the same time when you still haven't even learned how to use your health potions. So, I'm not joking when I say I love this. I am someone who, if I die in an MMORPG, these days, that's an extremely good sign for me. Difficulty options in an MMORPG, they're a weird thing. There's no getting around that. But my early impressions are that it's a fun way to customize your experience, and I'm glad it's here. Now, if only there was an option to, I don't know, make this NPC escort quest walk, not even my speed, just like faster. Come on, Sarah, I've got places to be. It's not like you're a relevant NPC, you're just some random old woman. This is an MMORPG, not an NPC RPG. Yeah, thanks for clapping. Thanks for actually clapping in real life, guys. But speaking of MMORPG, I don't think I've seen anyone else online in my first few hours in this world. Lord of the Rings Online has been around for a very long time, almost 18 years at this point, and it can be hard to maintain that popularity over so many years. For example, on the server I started on, Gladden, there were 128 total people online, with only a handful that were anywhere near my level. The world chat was always quiet, and it was a miracle if I ever came across someone in the open world. For that reason, a lot of the game has been retrofitted to be solo player friendly, especially along the main storyline. Throughout the game are things called instances. You can think of them as dungeons from other MMORPGs like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV. Instances usually require a group, or as this game calls it, a fellowship. Because the Fellowship of the Ring guys, because it's like the movie. These can be found all over the place, and a few of them crop up and are required in the main storyline, which is a problem if there are no players on the server who are 1, at your level, 2, on that quest, and 3, you have crippling social anxiety and are worried about letting people down in a game that It's not that important. It's gonna be okay, guys. So a change was made to give solo players a buff called Inspiration when undertaking one of these story instances solo. Inspiration massively buffs your stats, putting your health in the thousands, multiplying your damage by as much as 10 times, and making you basically invincible. Like, come on, I should not be able to just run through this instance pulling the aggro of literally every monster and still not have my health fall below even like 90%. It's a bit ridiculous. But it is better than not being able to do the instance at all because there's no one else online. Lord of the Rings Online isn't alone in trying to give a solo option for players who can't or don't want to find a group. Final Fantasy XIV, which I realize I keep mentioning, I don't even like that game. They give you NPCs that fill out your party and take on whichever roles you need. Old school RuneScape will scale some of its raids based on the party size, making them soloable, but not easy. I wish that Lord of the Rings went with one of those options, preferably the NPC route, because then you can maintain some semblance of challenge and the spirit of it being a piece of group content where you're filling your class's role and not just, a god who does everything. This is especially important to me when bosses inside these instances will refer to you as if there are multiple people in the group when, nope, it's just Slop Rod. Man champion. But Inspiration is only available for instances on the main story path, and there are a good number of other instances scattered around the world that are optional, but can be really fun to do. So if I wanted to try those out, I had to find a group. As I continued questing in Breeland, the starting area that is both huge and has a literal metric fuck ton of quests, I found myself in this area known as the Barrow Downs, where I had been methodically clearing out every single quest I came across, but eventually, all these quests pointed to Othengroth, the Great Barrow. The Great Barrow is made up of 3 separate instances, and it was the first I came across that I wouldn't be able to solo, so I headed to the Looking For group chat to ask if any of the 100 people on the server felt like hitting up a level 24 instance with me. To my surprise, I got a response right away from a mysterious man named Golristar, a level 38 man champion, and thus, just like Rihanna and Calvin Harris in that magical summer of 2011, we found love in a hopeless place. The Gladden Lord of the Rings Online server in 2025. I told him I was new to the game, and he welcomed me with open arms. His big, strong level 38 muscles carried us through the dungeon as he annihilated every wight in his way while I stuck behind to pick up some little chalices for my quest. We worked together to take down the bosses of the first instance, and then he helped me learn how to start the next instance in this god-awful instance finder user interface. I mean, how am I supposed to know how to work this? We laughed as his character kept getting stunned by nothing. This is an 18-year-old video game, by the way, but ultimately, we just had a great time. Afterwards, he logged onto his alt and crafted me a new ranged weapon since I didn't have one yet, and he even gave me one for when I leveled up later. Through the Great Barrow instance, we had forged a bond stronger than time. Stronger than the most powerful boss any dungeon could throw at us. The next day, he invited me to another instance that I was way too low level for, but I joined him regardless because that's just the kind of guy I am. And again, the 2 of us, and a max level player named Arverdan, who was literally one-shotting everything, had the best time. And more importantly, I was getting a chance to see parts of the game that I felt like were pretty rare to see this day and age because of just how sparse the population is. This is what I love about MMORPGs. No matter how small the communities might get, or how solo-oriented the game might become, just having the opportunity to group with people for content that requires it leads to some of the most memorable moments of my life when it comes to gaming. So much of what MMORPGs do can be replicated in a single-player game, but what you can't imitate are the other real players around you that make the game special. Me and Golristar were at the start of what I knew would be a long, important friendship. A fellowship, even. But that darkness in the game's code, the same darkness that is the very reason combat is the way it is, finally began to reach its tendrils out into the world.
Within this disk lies an ancient evil, one not seen in online games in many, many moons. Lord of the Rings Online was originally made with what are known as 32-bit servers. 32-bit is a fancy term to say that these servers are pretty fucking slow. It was perfectly standard in 2007 for MMORPGs to be made on 32-bit servers, but times have changed, and honestly, Lord of the Rings Online's 32-bit servers are particularly bad, so Standing Stone Games, the current developers of Lord of the Rings Online, decided to do something about it.
Just days after I had formed my friendship with Goldstar, Standing Stone Games announced the closure of all of their 32-bit servers, including Gladden. Free character transfers were made available for anyone on those servers to the brand new 64-bit servers that had recently been opened up, so I took it. I moved from Gladden to Glamdring, hoping that Goldstar would be there too, waiting for me, but he wasn't. And in this game, there are no cross-server relationships. I had been too hasty in my move, too bold in my decision-making. For the reward of modern server hardware, I paid the price of friendship. A price I won't soon forget. I tried to continue Sloprod's journey after this. I really did, but it felt wrong. This server wasn't his home. He belonged on the empty, soon-to-be discontinued 32-bit servers. And I needed to be on the new, more populated 64-bit servers. So I made the difficult decision to let Sloprod go, to let him run free with Goldstar. The burden of the next 70 hours would have to be taken on by another. Meet Senric, Manhunter. He's a little 30 hunter who just sped his way to the exact same point in the game Sloprod was in half the time, but how did he do it? Meet my credit card. That's right, I bought the VIP membership for $15. This gives me unimaginable benefits like access to every quest in the game, 500 Lotro points per month, additional inventory slots, daily bonus experience, and more. Why did I do this, you ask? The official reason is because I wanted to get the full picture of Lord of the Rings Online. For you. But the unofficial reason is... Either way, I think it's only fair that you go to my Patreon now and give me your money to pay for this. Because you think I can afford this? No way, dude. Like, come on. Why aren't you going to my Patreon? The link's in the description. Do you hate me? Why aren't you going? But above all the other benefits, there's one thing the VIP membership gets you that places it above everything else. Faster crafting. Lord of the Rings Online has a very robust crafting system, one I didn't get into until later on in Sloprod's life. On Senric, though, I made it a priority, and that was a very good decision. One of my big knocks on crafting systems in most MMOs is that they just aren't that useful, save for maybe some very early levels or niche gear. This holds true for Final Fantasy, old school RuneScape, New World back when it was an MMO, and countless other games in the genre. And that's a shame, because I love the feeling of gathering materials for something and being able to forge a new best-in-slot weapon with my own two hands. With my character's own two hands. But it's all too common for quest rewards, and especially drops from monsters, to totally outclass crafted gear, because after all, we all love killing things. In Lord of the Rings Online, though, this wasn't the case. There are tons of crafting professions in the Lord of the Rings Online. You can become a cook, a farmer, a metalsmith, a weaponsmith, a jeweler, a scholar, and more. All of these come with their own progression systems, guilds, and unlocks that allow you to craft and enhance gear and consumables that have actual uses for your characters throughout leveling. Each character can have up to 3 professions, and since Senric is a manhunter, I chose to go for forestry, woodworking, and tailoring. This let me become a certified assembly line, going from gathering wood and leather to turning those raw materials into my new bow, armor, and cloak. And all while crafting your new best-in-slot gear, you're gaining XP. Not just XP in that profession, actual character XP. There were several occasions of Senric leveling up while crafting because the XP really isn't bad. It was a nice side benefit to an already very beneficial system. Using these professions, I was able to continually keep my gear well above the item level I was seeing from quests. My bows were always dealing more than enough damage, my gear was always contributing the right stats, and I was a happy little guy. Is this the greatest crafting system ever seen in any game ever? Of course not. That's Terraria. In Lord of the Rings Online, it's ridiculously straightforward, and the reputation system when you get to each profession's respective guild is straight up ass. But I am glad to see a crafting system that rewards the time invested into it. And because I'm a VIP, look how fast I create all this stuff compared to a peasant, free player. Thanks, money. Still waiting for you to hit my Patreon though. Kind of crazy. I just explained the entire crafting system and you haven't gone there. Using my new gear and bonus XP, I was able to zoom past the point in the game Slop Rod was in just about half the time. To be honest though, most of the time I save just comes from knowing where to go more than any money I spent. Oh, and it's also really helpful that hunters have literally 100 travel skills to teleport from anywhere in the game to main cities like Bree. With my powers combined, Senric was able to blast through the Bree lands, take control of the Lone lands, absolutely decimate the North Downs. I became best friends with a guy called Capamara because we just happened to be killing spiders at the same time. I soloed instances that weren't meant to be soloed because hunters can kite and self-heal and kite until they heat death of the universe. I even managed to do a story quest where I was supposed to have the inspiration buff but didn't because of a bug. 18-year-old video game, by the way. The progress I was making was reaching gamer levels heretofore unseen, and it should have been fun. It should have been exhilarating, but it just wasn't. Lord of the Rings Online is a slow game. That's probably obvious to you given how many times I've said it's a slow game, and also the fact that I'm level 40 out of 150. I have no issues with MMORPGs being slow. In fact, I usually prefer it. But being slow doesn't mean it has to feel stagnant. If you look at World of Warcraft Classic, you'll see a similar example of an MMORPG with an extremely long leveling process. Like Lord of the Rings Online, it's a game that emphasizes the journey, not the destination. Although the destination is pretty cool. That journey takes you from forests to jungles to deserts to wastelands and more. The environments you're in, the types of creatures you encounter, the dungeons you delve into are all vastly diverse from one another, which helps mask the truth that you are very much doing the same thing in every single one of these zones. You start off killing kobolds for their candles at level 5, only to find yourself killing trolls for their necklaces 40 levels and 60 hours later. It's the same thing in different clothes, but the diversity of the presentation is what keeps it fresh. That's not something I was getting from Lord of the Rings Online. That's not to say the zones are all identical. Obviously, the swamps of the Lone Lands aren't the same as the mountains of the Trollshaws, but the way they feel and present themselves wasn't selling my brain on their differences. This wasn't helped by the story quests being so absurdly slow. Moments that should have been badass, like stalking the woods with Legolas, taking down trolls, or fighting through a fortress with Gimli to kill one of the first antagonists of the main story, are points in the story that should have felt awesome. But their pacing, combined with just how unbelievably easy they were, made it all feel like a chore. There's an entire quest instance where you have to go on a walk with Frodo throughout Rivendell to listen to him go on and on about his burden, but he can't tell you what it is. It's really serious, but he can't say. But it's bad, believe me. Yeah, Frodo, I think I understand. Every time I walk near you, I get a debuff called Dread. I don't need to hear you complain over and over about this. I have my own problems too, man. I mean, oh my god, I'm just gonna, no, I'm done. You might be thinking, well, yeah, you went through these zones twice because you made an alt character, so of course you found it boring. But the problem with that is, I love alts. I'm the poster child of altaholics. Trying new classes and exploring the world from a new perspective is one of my favorite parts of class-based MMORPGs. Hell, I used to make new characters in RuneScape all the time as a kid, which doesn't even make sense because that game doesn't have classes. All the characters are the same, so I clearly have no problem with things being repetitive. The issue, I think, was simple. The world isn't for me. I like the Lord of the Rings movies. I think the moment when Legolas slides down on the stairs on a shield shooting a bow is really cool, and I love the sexual tension between Sam and Frodo, but I just never got that into Middle-earth beyond that. I never felt the desire to explore the world in an immersive way beyond the story of the Fellowship, and I think that's Lord of the Rings Online's strong suit. Visiting iconic locations like the Prancing Pony, the Shire, and Rivendell, seeing characters that are mentioned only in the books and getting to see them expanded on, getting to interact with the legends of the trilogy like Aragorn, Gimli, and Bill the Pony. These are all extremely cool things to experience for fans of Middle-earth, but for me, it just wasn't really connecting. So all I had to rely on was that feeling of progress that so many MMORPGs I feel like do a better job of delivering on than Lord of the Rings Online does. Does that mean this is a bad MMORPG? No, not necessarily. It just means you need to approach it differently than you would most other games. It's not an action RPG or a fast-paced modern MMO. It's a very slow burn. It's more like going on a tour of a world than anything else. And it's a mistake to force it to be something it isn't. Unless Lord of the Rings Online has tons of zones that are appropriately designed for specific levels. Breeland for your level 5 to 20 characters, Lone Lands for 20 to 30, North Downs for 30 to 40, and if you follow that carefully crafted laid out path for you, you'll have a relaxing time like I just talked about. I don't want to relax when I play games. I want to be challenged. I want to be punished for my hubris and rewarded for my straight up insanity. So what if I just skip some parts? Maybe I don't clear every quest in the North Downs. What if we head to the Trollshaws just a few levels early? Wow, look at all this orange and red text in my quest log. That's the game telling me you're not supposed to be here, but this is the face of a man who knows no fear. The tables have turned. The game fears me now. I've elevated every aspect of my gameplay. Even the area names are in red. I'm in a territory no man, elf, or hobbit has ever entered. And finally, I'm having a blast. These quests aren't a walk in the park like the ones designed for my level, but they feel so much more satisfying to complete. The feeling of kiting some regular mobs like deer, because if they hit me even once my health falls below half, is one I really enjoy. Plus, there's the added benefit that these monsters and zones contain crafting ingredients that I need to keep my gear up to par with my level. You might be thinking, oh, well, if this is how difficult you want the game to be, why don't you just turn up the difficulty like you mentioned earlier? And that's a fair question, especially since I praise the difficulty system so much. But there's one part of the difficulty system that is just so bad, I actually ended up turning my difficulty down. There are also special effects called Enrage effects that start at difficulty 3, but the game doesn't explain that to you, so neither will I. Very quickly, you'll learn that these are one of the most annoying things in the entire game. Enrage effects give every monster an AoE attack and the ability to use a shield that greatly reduces the damage they take to the point that they're almost invulnerable. The lore reason given for this is that Sauron is watching you and is helping that monster kill you, but I really don't understand why Sauron is so upset about me killing a boar. Is this like his favorite boar? Sorry, dude. Long story short, this system makes fights drag on so long by making you do basically 0 damage for a period of time, and you just have to wait until the shield drops. It's not a fun way to make the game harder and just kind of feels cheap, so I turned it off. I'm a much bigger fan of monsters having slightly larger health pools and dealing more damage, which is exactly the effect you get by doing quests while underleveled without the annoying enrage effects. And even better, now the quest rewards went from small upgrades or straight up downgrades to absolute game changers. This shift was really hammered home when I came across my first item set. Doing one of the many quests in the Trollshaws, I noticed something on a reward I hadn't seen before, a set effect. This Woodlands jacket, an upgrade in its own right, could be matched with 2 other items to complete the Garb of the Woods set, resulting in bonuses to my might and agility, the 2 most important stats for a hunter. And here's the thing about me you might not know, if I see an item set, I get extremely excited. This entire open world full of things to do and places to see was now reduced to one thing for me, finishing this set. This should have been an easy thing to do. Turns out I already had the second piece, the shoulders, in my inventory from an earlier quest reward. All I needed was the Band of the Woods and I'd get my plus 16 agility boost. Turns out I was pretty naive. After a few hours of questing with no sign of the Band of the Woods anywhere, I decided to do a little research. It turns out that ring is a reward from a quest called Sarnamil's Flight, part of a short quest chain starting with another quest, Worms on the Heights. Simple enough, but wait, Worms on the Heights is a prerequisite itself, a road seldom traveled, which itself requires completion of Return to Thornhand, which is the middle of a quest chain that starts with Master of the Risen. So I pulled on this thread until I finally found where it starts, at a quest called Scouting the Wild, which actually goes back to the Lone Lands. Starting from there, I just had to head into the Trollshaws, talk to this woman at a camp who asked me to find her friend. Her friend then asked me to go get him a colorful feather from a nest. Once I got the feather and gave it back to him, he asked me to scout a nearby bear den, then to scout a nearby troll cave, then to go inside the troll cave and finally tell Elrond's sons about what I had found in that troll cave. Elrond's sons then sent me off to kill a wormwight, but then a scout asked me to find out who was that wormwight's master. This new scout asked me to kill some bears, and then he asked me to go kill another bear, but this is a dead bear. He then asked me to rescue his bird, I guess? And then he asked me to kill some hillmen to find out who their master is. Then he comes with me to kill the ringleader of all this undead stuff, at which point he tells me to go back to Elrond's sons and tell them what's up. Then Elrond's sons are like, damn, that's crazy, we gotta go tell our dad. So then they ask me to go help some other scouts with their problems. Those scouts ask me to help them with killing some smaller worms and a bigger worm, and then they want me to look off the side of a cliff for a really big lizard. I head back down the mountain, kill that lizard, turn in the quest, and after 3 hours of following one of the most convoluted quest chains in any MMO I've ever played, I finally unlocked the final piece of the Garb of the Wood set and got my plus 16 agility bonus. If you're wondering, how could anyone have possibly figured all this out without looking it up? It actually is pretty easy when you don't do a bunch of content out of order, causing you to miss the first quest in the chain back when you would have first entered the zone. So this one's kind of on me. The wild journey for the Garb of the Wood set, as chaotic and self-inflicted as it was genuinely so much fun. Traveling from one end of a zone to the other, zigzagging from NPC to NPC, and killing dozens of different creatures for a reward I was really excited to get just felt so good. It also accentuated one of my favorite parts of any MMORPG, getting sidetracked when you're trying to complete one big goal, leading to dozens of smaller goals. This is the kind of thing that makes progress feel real to me, the kind of thing that sends dopamine straight to my brain. In fact, this whole experience of questing underleveled felt like it refocused me on what was really fun about this game, the quests. Once I had to slow down because the quests weren't this piece of cake I could walk all over, I started reading the text, understanding what my objectives were, and actually learning about how they fit into the world around me. I had tried blasting through the story like this was any other MMORPG, but this is a world based on one of the greatest authors in history. I understood that now. I had to commit myself to this fully, like how Viggo Mortensen committed himself to staying in character when he broke his toe in this scene of the Two Towers. So I refocused myself on the main storyline. I went north to the Misty Mountains, helping Gloin fight back the goblins that were causing him trouble. I traveled to the icy bay of Foroshel to lend my aid to the tribes of men and dwarves who still live there. And finally, I took my first steps into the endgame of this first storyline, Angmar. The story of the Shadows of Angmar is long. It takes place over 15 books with 178 quests in total from start to finish. Cynric has gone from Bree, where you help fight back the undead rising in the Barrow Downs, to the Trollshaws, where you help hunt down a Nazgul, to Thorin's Hall to craft a key to the Witch King's city of Carn Dûm, and finally to Angmar to attempt to take down the primary antagonist of Volume 1, Mordorith, the Steward of Angmar. It takes dozens of hours working your way through this story to get strong enough to even set foot in Angmar. It's mentioned by NPCs as the root of all the danger facing Eriador, and it's built up in a way that feels actually kinda scary. It was my main motivator in pushing through to the end. I refused to lose hope that Angmar would make me understand what was so special about this game, that the pain had been worth it, like the pain that Viggo Mortensen would get. Angmar didn't let me down. It's unlike anywhere else I had been so far in Middle-earth. Tall, blackened mountains, a distinct lack of towns and cities, leaving room for only sparse encampments, green pools of liquid that can literally kill you instantly if you so much as set foot in them, and a soundtrack that is just full of anxiety. In the distance, far to the north of the zone, lies the Witch King's city of Carn Dûm. Volume 1 will eventually end there, but there's a lot of work to do first. Cynric, Manhunter's first stop in Angmar was the settlement of Augair, home to the Trevgalorg. Unlike the allies he's come across so far, he has to earn their trust. These quests weren't really anything special on their own, don't get me wrong, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the presentation of the environment making the game feel repetitive and boring. Framing these quests as my character earning the respect and trust of this super isolated tribe tucked away in one of the most evil places in the world makes every action feel different and feel special. I'm sent off to fight some orc tribes. I help fight back a massive hill beast. I enter this super scary instance where I solo 3 bosses that definitely weren't meant to be soloed. I don't think I needed to do this for the quest, but it was fun, so I'm talking about it. It all culminates in a quest instance where I help the tribe reclaim one of their outposts that was taken by some of their old tribe mates who turned against them. Again, none of this on its own stood out. It was all the pretty standard kill quests and fetch quests that I had gotten used to, but the presentation of it all had me really engaged in the story. The cherry on top is the reward. Each quest gives you a piece of armor that is part of a 5-piece set that is specifically tied to this tribe. Each piece on its own is a great reward in its own right, but the set effect, giving bonuses to health regen, agility, and might, made this something I'd wear through to the end game. And as lame as it sounds, I was proud to wear it. This questline was my introduction to Angmar. It set the tone for how ruthless and nasty this zone is, but it also set me up to tackle it through some actually useful rewards. It's saying something that I completed hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 quests in Lord of the Rings Online, but this is the one I was left thinking about after 100 hours. Regardless, with my new armor set equipped, my eyes turned to the north. I was ready to take on the end of Volume 1 and beat the Shadows of Angmar campaign. Step 1. We have to help this woman, Lorniel, free her father from the city of Carn Dûm. Most importantly, she has to live, at all costs. Using that key I crafted earlier, we were able to gain entrance to the city, and I had to kite way too many elite mobs who take just so long to kill before we finally get our first encounter with Mordorith. You might remember Mordorith from the beginning of this video when I thought he was Dor, but nope, here he is in all his glory. Now I know he might look scary, but oh fuck. Oh no. Shit. Well, no sense crying over spilled milk, I guess. It's time to face off against the big bad of this whole campaign. Wow, what a fight. Look at how much damage he does. Oh, almost got him. Oh, I just got him to half health and he's talking. This must be the start of phase 2. Oh, wait, my character is now just going to cower in fear as the guy I was killing runs away slowly. Man, I love that. That's really cool how this always happens. So I guess this wasn't the climactic fight I expected it to be. But the good news is that we got Lorniel's father back, Goladir, at the small cost of Lorniel. Goladir is the man who will help us actually defeat Mordorith for real. Except there's a problem. Goladir hates me for some reason. So to cure his depression, I have to go kill some goblins to get his old sword back. But his sword is broken, so I have to go to a blacksmith super far away to fix it. But that blacksmith actually can't fix it, so I had to go to Rivendell, which is super far away, to find a blacksmith who can. Then, with his repaired sword given back, Goladir forgives me, and he's like, yeah, let's go kill Mordorith. Forget my daughter. So we head into the castle of the Witch King together, where we fight through waves of enemies until we finally get to the throne room where... Well, wait, hold on, where's Goladir? Goladir, where are you? Oh, I'm stunned? Why am I stunned? Oh, hey Goladir, why aren't you following me? Oh, you're stuck in place? Oh, this is a common bug with this quest instance, and the only way to fix it is to restart the game and restart the instance. So I have to fight through everything again? Cool. So I'll just abandon this quest. Thank God there's a 5-minute timer to retry quests. Super neat. No worries though, I'll just fight through the wave of enemies again, and it happened again. He's stuck again. This is the climax of like the whole campaign, I'm pretty sure, and I'm gonna have to restart again. Fourth time turns out to be the charm, and we finally get our big fight against Mordorith, the big bad of this campaign. He may have escaped me once, but I won't be. I'm cowering in fear again. He's healing. He's healing. Why is he healing? They can't do this to me. They can't force me to let him get away again, can they? I mean, I'm gonna actually kill myself in Lord of the Rings Online. The pain I felt in this moment. What I thought was the climax of the story. What was my second time facing off against Mordorith? I can't even begin to describe it. I can only imagine it was somewhat similar to that time actor Viggo Mortensen broke his toe kicking this helmet. This story, this game, is full of so many great moments. The crafting system, the Trev Galore quests, the world itself, but at every turn, it has let me down. Its pacing issues, and its mechanics, the repetitiveness, and the goddamn cowering in fear every single quest. Oh, great, now some old hobbit woman is running off with the Palantir. Wait, this isn't a joke? I didn't realize that was the woman from the instance at like the beginning of this video until I was writing the script. So that's kind of neat. So I guess like it's all like time's like a flat circle. All of this turned out to be not the climax of Volume 1. Turns out, we were a little bit over halfway through. And the worst part is, I was already 100 hours into this game.
You know, I hope to do this in a more dramatic way, but I guess this will have to do. But that doesn't mean we can't still have some fun. I mean, come on, guys. It's just a video game. no one's gonna know. So, Lord of the Rings Online, thanks for the memories. I have to keep going. I have to finish this.
I went to Rivendell to see off the Fellowship as they headed on their quests that I totally know nothing about. I said goodbye to all my favorite characters like Gandalf, Boromir, Bill the Pony. Come on, you remember Bill the Pony, right? But I have my own adventure to finish, and somehow I'm only like halfway through it. You remember that old woman from earlier before I had my little mental breakdown? Well, turns out her body was being used as a disguise by another wraith called Amarthael. This might be confusing, but her story is the story of the Shadows of Angmar campaign. That's right, we're over halfway through the campaign quest, had what seemed like a climatic boss fight not once but twice, and have already spent 100 hours in Lord of the Rings Online, but we're just now getting to the real story. I headed back to Angmar after finding out about Amarthael's existence and started another stretch of going back and forth between NPCs, delivering messages, and being told to go deliver yet another message. This is all done in an effort to learn more about who Amarthael really is. Is it fun? No. But is it interesting? After many, many hours of pointless questing, I managed to spring a trap to capture a wraith called Mordrimbor, who tells us to go talk to an elf in Angmar named Lérden. And Lérden sends us on a quest to the Trollshaws, where we get one of the most boring quests this game has had yet, and that is saying something. We're forced to sit there and watch in-game cutscene after in-game cutscene with these little tiny fights in between that are the equivalent of when a TikTok has Subway surfers in the corner to keep your ADHD mind engaged. The sad part is that this quest is where the story does get interesting. It's just delivered to you in a very boring, dry, non-interactive way. You're reduced to sitting and waiting for 15 minutes as a story plays out in front of you, showing you how Lérden's daughter Narmaleth was corrupted by Sauron and used to forge a powerful ring called Narchuil. Narchuil. This might sound like it's one of those rings of power from the legendary TV show The Rings of Power, but it's actually not that. It's just a powerful ring. Anyway, Narmaleth becomes so corrupted she eventually becomes Amarthael. Not like how Amarthael took over Sarah Oakhart's body. I think Narmaleth is Amarthael. I guess I'm not really sure. Maybe we need another 15-minute story quest to explain it all. So the story of the second half of the campaign revolves around hunting down Amarthael and the ring Narchuil. And like I said, this is where the story gets interesting. All of this stuff is completely original to Lord of the Rings Online. It doesn't come from anything Tolkien wrote, but just uses Tolkien's themes to write a story that feels like it fits. I feel like this is a real strength of a game like Lord of the Rings Online, and something that I hope the subsequent expansions focus more on. Zooming in on Angmar, telling the small-scale stories of people that were impacted by the world-altering events going on in Mordor, getting to see the tragedy of a character who was corrupted by Sauron but still having to fight to stop her. It's this fashion of storytelling that helps this massive world feel digestible, and it's something I feel the first half of the campaign was missing. Anyway, let's have the game talk at us for 15 minutes while a council in Rivendell is told by Lérden that the ring Narchuil was broken into two pieces, one that is in the possession of Amarthael and the other back up in Frowershell. So we head up there once again where we track down Mordrimbor, who was also looking for the ring fragment, which culminates in an epic boss battle to end the instance. Now, I know what you're thinking. Uh-oh, a boss fight? I bet that means this dude will stun you after he gets to half health and run away. But you need to understand that Mordrimbor is like, the third in command of this story, so the game doesn't really have a reason to keep him alive. Anyway, right before I kill him, he stuns me and starts making a little speech. Fun! I love not being able to do anything ever. Thanks, Lord of the Rings Online. After I'm forced to watch Amarthael and Mordrimbor fight it out because of some arguing they did while I was stunned, I'm somehow able to recover the piece of Narchuil, which I bring to Aragorn, who... Wait a second. Didn't I just watch you leave Rivendell? Whatever, I don't have time to question this. Aragorn tells me to give the ring piece to Lérden, who has the other half, I guess, and then just fucking leaves with it, and we're introduced to one of the worst quest mechanics I've seen in any game ever. Session play. It turns out Laerden leaves because he goes to turn over the ring to Amarthael because he thinks he can still save his daughter. But instead of telling us all of this, the game lets us play through it by taking on the role of Laerden. This is good. This is showing, not telling. This is game design 101. This is fun. Or at least it would be if they had put any moment of thought into the system. When you take over Laerden's body, you're granted a new suite of abilities to learn. This isn't so bad since there's just a handful to use, but you may have noticed something odd. My entire user interface is reset. Like, my unit frames are back in the top left, my buff bar is smack dab in the middle of the screen, all my action bars are hidden again. This total reset of 90% of your settings and UI makes this instance such an unbelievable nightmare to play through. I talked a long time ago about how bad the UI is, so after making all the tweaks I needed to make it even somewhat usable, having it reset felt like a punch in the face. The story instance itself is actually cool, which is a shame because I couldn't really focus on it. You, as Laerden, are guided by the voice of his daughter further and further up a mountain, where, after a few minutes of fighting, he's ultimately captured by Amarthael, the ring included. This should have been awesome. This is such an interesting way to deliver the story to the player, but it's so poorly executed, I just couldn't help but hate every second of it. And that's kind of an encapsulation of my whole experience with Lord of the Rings Online, as harsh as that sounds. For every cool and interesting feature, there are countless others that turn me off to the game, not the least of which is the overall lack of polish that is present from the controls down to the instances. Maybe I'm being too hard on the game. It is cool to have the earlier content preserved despite years and years of expansions, but the bottom line for me is that this game hasn't aged in a charming way like other classic MMOs have. It's aged poorly and it's aged quickly. But I still wanted to finish this campaign, if nothing else than to just say I did. So I tracked down Amarthael. I had a climactic fight against her that, you guessed it, resulted in me getting stunned and her almost getting away, only to have the ring stolen by Mordorith in a moment of betrayal. This brings Amarthael back to our side, with the part of her that was the elf Narmalith restored, and together, we head into Karn Doom one last time to take down Mordorith. After a very long fight against Mordrembor, who, get this, we actually do get to kill, we destroy Narhuil and finally face off against Mordorith for the final time. This is the fight I've been waiting for. From the moment I met this guy, I have wanted to take him down. I have wanted to be the one to deal the final blow. I've had countless chances to, but he's always managed to just barely escape. But not this time. I looked it up on the wiki. This is the final quest, and this is the moment I strike down Mordorith and beat the Shadows of Angmar campaign. The final fight isn't against Mordorith himself at first, it's against an illusion of him. This could have been lame, but it's actually pretty cool. Mordorith's illusion disappears and summons illusions of the people Narmalith wronged when she was Amarthael, like Sarah Oakheart and her own father. It reminds you of the story that led to this point, of the hours invested, of the amount of times you've had to sit there stunned while one of the major bad guys got away. Finally, and pretty easily, we beat the illusion and draw out the real Mordorith. Alright baby, time for the real final boss fight, here we go! And oh, he kills Narmalith, while I just kind of watch, I guess? With her dying breath, Narmalith drives her sword through Mordorith's heart, and with that, the three Wraiths who had been in control of Angmar are dead. And I guess I didn't really do anything to stop Mordorith, since I only fought his illusion. Didn't ever really get to land a blow on him, but whatever, I guess it's a poetic end. Cool. If you just read this story, or watch a lore summary in a YouTube video, you'll understand that the writers of this game did a genuinely great job creating something that feels like Lord of the Rings without putting you too close to the story of the movies, allowing you to explore something new, an adventure that tackles the same themes in a different and often darker way. It's a really strong introduction to the game, but the gameplay mechanics of how that story is delivered to you, in my opinion, let it down. Regardless, at level 51 and 120 hours in across both of my characters, I had completed the Shadows of Angmar. The journey ahead spans 100 more levels, 11 more expansions, and hundreds more hours. It's just not a journey I plan to undertake. For now, there's something else I have to do.
And that's the story of my 100 hours in Lord of the Rings Online. Yeah, this kid gets it. Totally. I guess in the end, Lord of the Rings Online just kinda wasn't for me. Is it a game with some charm to it that I think has merit for someone else? Totally, but for me, it's not a game I plan to continue on with. But to be fair, there's a lot to this game I wasn't able to explore and expand on. Things like skirmishes or monster play, the PvP mode, or even crucial systems in the story, like legendary items, which start off in the Mines of Moria expansion right after the Shadows of Angmar. Those are, I would consider, key parts of this game that, in my over 100 hours, I never really got to. Do I wish I could have? No. But despite everything I missed, I do think 100 hours is enough time to understand what Lord of the Rings is, and like I've said many times, it's just a game that's not really for me, but it might be for you, and if it's something you want to try out, it's free. Go ahead, what's the worst that can happen? Death? And hey, if you play Lord of the Rings Online and you're angry about me about this video, go support me on Patreon. It's the best way to get back at me. I hate when people give me money. I'm gonna go to sleep now.
Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat. Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat.